Kind of strange, huh? I just thought, I wonder if I could stand up there and count to 50 and just be quiet. I made it to like 40 and I got uncomfortable. We're so used to noise, aren't we? And even in church, we're used to it. I mean, you're used to me coming up and going, oh man, today I went to this place, and getting into the story, right? And it's like, man, that's our life. It's like, man, we're always just going from one thing to another, and we're expecting noise, we're expecting just busyness. And I feel like sometimes even in church, I feel this pressure. Like, don't let there be any dead space. Don't let there be any silence. I just got done speaking at a junior high conference, okay, to 1,000 junior hires, and I tell you, every second I was like, oh, I'm losing them, jump, do something, get them back. But we're just so used to so much noise, and I don't know, a lot of times I feel a pressure when I get up here to make sure there's no dead space, make sure I'm going from one thing to another, make sure I'm keeping everyone's attention, because we're used to such a fast-paced life. And, we work real hard at making sure everyone that gets on this platform even can really communicate to people. Like next weekend, we've got Steve Farrar coming. Steve is known nationwide. He is one of the top speakers for men's conferences in the nation. And he's going to be doing a men's conference next Saturday, and then he's going to be speaking for our weekend services. And he's speaking on the issue on our weekend services. He's talking about overcoming overload. It's a new book that he's coming out with, and it's this whole idea of just the craziness of our lives and trying to overcome it. And it's interesting that he's speaking on that topic, because the passage we're looking at today in Luke is about that very issue. It's about busyness. And the thing is this. There's nothing wrong with living a busy life. I think it's important for us to be busy. It becomes a sin when we busy ourselves with things and we neglect the things that are most important in our lives. We busy ourselves with so many things that we can't stop and be silent and just come into the presence of God. There's a story here in Luke chapter 10, starting in verse 38, and it's a pretty simple story. It's only 5 verses we're going to look at today. I want to keep things a little different today, just kind of a little more mellow. Just try to slow down. In Luke chapter 10, verse 38, it tells a story that probably a lot of you are familiar with. It's a story of Jesus going to the house of these 2 gals named Mary and Martha. And it says in Luke 10, verse 38, it says, as Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and asked, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her to help me. Martha, Martha, the Lord answered, you are worried and upset about many things, but only one thing is needed. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. A pretty simple story, right? Jesus walks into this home of these 2 sisters, Martha probably the older sister, because it's her house, and Mary's living there, and Jesus comes in, the Son of God. They knew who he was. Jesus starts talking, and Mary just sits down at his feet and just listens. Meanwhile, Martha's going out, she's preparing the 7-course meal, she's getting all this stuff ready, she's distracted by it all. And she goes, Jesus, look at Mary, she's sitting there listening to you. Tell her to get up and help me. And Jesus, Martha, Martha, you're distracted by all this stuff. She says, there's only one thing that's really necessary. And Mary here, she's chosen the good thing, and I'm not going to take that away from her. It's a pretty powerful story. I mean, it's a simple story that you may just kind of read in passing and browse over, but there's so much depth in this one little message, this one little passage. I mean, it says that Martha was distracted, verse 40. Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. The word distracted, this is the only place in the New Testament where this word is found, and it literally means to draw from all around. It's the idea, you're drawing attention from all around. Rather than being focused on one thing, it's the idea of being focused on so much. It's the idea of getting attention from so many things. Here Martha is, think about this. The Son of God has walked into her house. And she's looking at all these different things. She's distracted. She's drawn from all different angles rather than focusing, rather than Mary, who just sits there, focused on the Son of God, going, what do you have to say to me? Everything else can wait, but the Son of God is in our house. Let me listen to him. And yet Martha is distracted by so many things. And I love the way in verse 41 it says, when she says, hey, you can picture it. Can you picture this in your mind? Are you picturing the scene there? This gal's sitting at Jesus' feet, and here's Martha running around, doing all the work, just frantic, and looks at Jesus and says, don't you care that Mary is just sitting there? Will you tell her to get up and help me? And Jesus, I love his response in verse 41. He doesn't go to Martha, calm down. He goes, Martha, Martha. He says it twice. He says, Martha, Martha. You ever do that with your kids? Rachel, Rachel. Right? Why? Because their mind is somewhere else. It's focused on so many different things. And it's like, you just see Jesus going, Martha, Martha. Just getting her attention. You feel like God has to do that to you sometimes? How were you doing when you came in today? Where was your mind? Was it focused when you walked into church and thought, I'm about to hear the very words of the Son of God? And were you just glued, focused on that? Or was your mind everywhere else to where God had to just stop you and go, Graham, just kind of grab your attention. I feel like God has to do that in my life sometimes. Honestly, to be totally honest with you right now, preparing for this message and just even sitting there during worship, my mind was just spinning. What am I going to say? What am I going to do here? What am I going to do here? Rather than thinking, here I am to worship, and just trying to get my mind focused. And that song, these songs that we're singing about God and coming into his presence, are we focused? Hopefully by now you are. Hopefully you can just calm down and go, okay, I'm here to worship God. There's nothing more important. It says he says, you were worried and upset by so many things. He says to Martha, you're worried and upset about many things, but only one thing is needed. Only one thing is necessary. The word necessary there is the word required or demanded. You know how you wake up every day and you've got a to-do list of things you have to get done? And really everyone has a to-do list for you, right? Your boss has one and says, this is what you have to get done today. Your spouse has one for you. Your kids have one for you. All these expectations. This is what you have to do for me today. But do you realize that God has one for you too also? That God has a to-do list for you of things, this is what you have to do every day. And Jesus says, I've got one thing. There's only one thing that's necessary. There's only one thing that's required of you, one thing that's demanded of you. Just sit and listen to me. And so often we get busy with everyone else's lists, and God says, I'm just asking for one thing. I'm telling you, one thing is necessary in your life today. There's one thing that's necessary for you today. So we wake up and we think, well, I got to do this. No, you don't have to. You don't have to do any of those things. According to God, there's one thing that is necessary, one thing that is needed. And that's what Mary was doing. She was sitting at the feet of Jesus. And we have to we got to learn to slow down, even just for a period of the day, and just listen to what God has to say to us through his word. I was thinking about this thing about being distracted, and I thought, I don't ever want to be a distraction. I don't ever want to be a distraction. I want, when people come to church, that you seriously hear the words of God himself. Not the words of Francis, but the words of God, of Jesus Christ himself, the very, very words of Scripture. And sometimes I can be a distraction. And it's so hard. It's hard for me to find that balance, because on the one hand, I don't want to bore anyone with the Word of God. I think that's a sin. On the other hand, I don't want to have people rely on the way that I communicate it. That I got to bring up a prop, I got to bounce something or play with something in order to get people to listen. Because the truth is all of us as believers in God need to be able to just sit down with the Word of God and be able to hear from God himself, where there's no middleman. It's just God and us. And we're going to do something right now that's a little different. We're going to have some verses just flash onto the screen, just from the book of Luke, verses that we've studied so far. And I just thought, this has nothing to do with me. These are just verses from God. This is God speaking directly to you. And as you read these verses, just picturing it coming right out of the mouth of God. Okay? A lot of times in church, I'll give a message and people leave and go, oh, Francis talked about this today. Francis said this. I disagree with Francis. And you know what? I didn't say it. You didn't think I come up with these verses? And so this is a way just to get rid of the middleman. And God is saying this to you. And what I'd like you to do is respond to him. Read the verse and picture that as coming from the mouth of God, and then you respond to him. You respond to God directly and say, God, I'm not going to do that. Okay, God, you just said that. What do I need to do? Picture yourself as Mary, sitting at the feet of Jesus, and respond to God directly with each of these verses as they come up. kind of nice just to be quiet, huh? Just get away from the noise and just listen to Jesus. Do you realize that you can do that every day? I mean, what did we do just now? We just took a couple of verses from the book of Luke. No one explained them. It's just from God to me. What do you have to say to me? And let me respond to you in prayer of what I think of this. Not only can we do that, but we need to do that every day. We're required to do that every day. You know, when Jesus tells Mary, or he tells Martha, look, Martha, what does he say to Martha? He goes, you're worried and upset about so many things, but only one thing is needed. And then he says that Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. There's nothing wrong with what Martha was doing, right? I mean, if Jesus is going to be over at your house, it's, you want to prepare something nice. Nothing wrong with that. He just says that, you know what, Mary's chosen what's better. There's only one thing that's needed. There's only one thing that's necessary. And Mary chose what was better. And it's kind of like what I talked about last weekend when I talked about, you gotta understand why God gives us commands. It's for our good. It's what's best. It's what's best for us. Again, this isn't a guilt thing of, oh man, God gives me one task every day and I don't do it. It's about what's best for you and about what's better. You ever struggle in getting to church? And you kind of have that debate, should we go? It's just kind of a mess today, everything's so busy. And then you force yourself to go, and then you're just glad you went. And you just go, oh gosh, I'm glad I went. I needed that. I just needed to worship. I needed that so much. You ever regret? Well, let me not do that one. I mean, maybe sometimes you do, but, for the most part, when you go to church, I mean, you get there and you just go, gosh, that was just good. I'm glad I didn't just sit at home. I'm glad I didn't watch, the rest of the game. I'm glad I just went. You ever regretted spending time alone with God in the morning? I mean, isn't it true? Those of you guys that have been believers for a while, okay, let's face it, we have kind of ups and downs, right, in our times with the Lord. There's those streaks where we can go just days and weeks and even months where we get up early, we get some good quality time with God, and things just go well. And it just seems like we're able to get things done during the day. Our attitude's better during the day. Everything's better during the day. But even in spite of that, we stop somehow. Somehow we get, quote unquote, busy and distracted by other things, right? And suddenly, well, I'm just too busy this week. I'm just going to put it off. Well, I'm on vacation or this or that. And we get out of that flow and we stop that time with the Lord and things start to go downhill. And we know that life is always better. It is always better when we spend time alone with God. And we know that in our head. And that somehow Satan deceives us and distracts us and we get our mind off of it and we stop. I mean, we all know this. I know this. I know the more time I spend in prayer, man, the better my attitude is, the better the day goes, the better everything goes. And yet somehow I can still be distracted. It's crazy. And you guys know, I mean, when you miss like weeks of church, you know how things go. And yet we allow life to get busy. Look, there's only one thing that's necessary, one thing that's needed, and Mary chose what was good, what was better. I was speaking to my wife today, and a bunch of women are at our women's retreat right now in Moore Park. They're at the Moore Park Women's Retreat, and that's why if you're a visitor and you go over the kids area and you see the kids kind of dressed funny this week, the women are gone. I just kept my kids in the same thing, Lisa left them in on Thursday. So at least I know it matches, Anyways, I was talking to her and, asking, hey, how's the women's retreat going, And she says, it was the greatest night on Friday night. It's like, really? I go, what was the best thing about the retreat so far? She goes, Friday night, we told the ladies just to go out and spend half an hour alone with the Lord. Just go out, look at the stars, be quiet, and just pray to God for half an hour. She said the women just raved about it. They just couldn't stop talking about it. And it showed me a couple things. One is, man, just how powerful it is when we have time alone with the Lord. And two is they don't get out much. I mean, like get out alone. I mean, well, I don't want to judge them, but you know what I mean? It's like life can be so busy, life can be so crazy, and with kids, and it's just nice for them to take a break away from the kids. I mean, for us guys, they're left alone with the kids. We kind of have sympathy now. We kind of understand. Wow, it's hard to be quiet. It's hard to have peace. It's hard to have quiet, and yet that's the greatest thing. That's what keeps us sane. Is this time alone with God? I mean, is there anything you could be doing right now that would be greater than just meditating on the words of Jesus? Just sitting at Jesus' feet, listening to him teach, and then just responding to him in prayer. Try to think right now, what greater thing could you be doing right now than sitting at the feet of Jesus and hearing his words and talking to him? We're going to do it again. We're just going to have some more time and just a few more verses out of Luke that just picture yourself sitting at the feet of Jesus like Mary. And as you read a verse, picture it coming out of the mouth of Jesus, and then in prayer, just respond to him each time.